The prison ship floated through the endless dark of space, silent and cold like a grave. Inside its steel walls, the sound of chains and distant screams echoed through the corridors. Hundreds of cages lined the lower decks, each holding broken bodies, each holding lost souls. And in one of those cages, forgotten and nameless, sat an alien who no longer believed in tomorrow. His body was weak, thin like dry wood. His eyes had once burned with the pride of his people, but now they looked empty like ash after fire. He had been a slave for so long that he could not remember the sound of freedom. The guards had taken his voice, beaten him until he learned silence, and starved him until he learned obedience. Every day was the same. A blast of light, the heavy door opening, boots stomping on the floor, and guards dragging slaves to work until their bodies fell. If he worked slow, he was whipped. If he raised his head, he was struck. If he dared to speak, he was beaten until the sound died in his throat. The other slaves had stopped speaking long ago. They only whispered at night when the guards slept. Whispers of freedom, whispers of revenge, whispers of home. But he never joined them. Hope was poison. Hope had killed his spirit once, and he would not drink from it again. He was caged, silenced, and forgotten. The galaxy had once known his race. They were thinkers, dreamers, builders of great cities. But when war came, no ally came to help. Their enemies burned their skies, crushed their armies, and sold the survivors like cattle. And the galaxy looked away. Now his people were nothing but property, traded like objects, dying in the shadows where no one would ever see. As the ship drifted in darkness, he sat in his cage, staring at the floor, waiting for another day of chains. He had no name anymore. Slaves did not deserve names. He was only a number scratched into the steel of his cage. To the guards, that was all he was. A shadow moved outside his cage. Heavy boots stopped in front of him. The alien did not look up. Looking up meant pain. A guard spat on the ground. Pathetic, the guard growled. The alien stayed still. Silence was survival. The guard slammed the bars of the cage with his baton, laughing as the alien flinched. Then he walked away, his boots fading into the distance. The alien closed his eyes. He wished he could sleep forever. But then something strange happened. Hours later, in the deep of the night cycle, when even the guards were half asleep, he heard a different sound. A soft scrape of metal, a careful click like someone unlocking a door. His eyes opened, weak but alert. A figure crouched near his cage. Not a guard. Not one of his own. This figure was different. The stranger wore dark armor, scratched and battle-worn, but the shape was not alien. The hands were human. The face under the helmet was human. The alien's breath caught. He had seen humans before, but only at a distance. Humans rarely traveled to this side of the galaxy. Most avoided these slave routes. Yet here was one right in front of him, kneeling at his cage. The human's voice was a whisper, firm but soft. "I won't leave you here," the alien froze. His heart beat faster, fear mixing with disbelief. He wanted to speak, but his voice was broken. All that came out was a dry rasp. Humans were strange. Some said they were violent. Some said they were dangerous. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was that this one had found him, in this forgotten place, in this sea of silence. The human pulled at the lock, tools working quickly. Sparks flickered as the cage creaked. The alien's eyes widened. Could this be real? Was this another trick? Many times before he had been promised freedom, only to be punished for believing. He could not trust. He dared not trust, yet deep inside his chest something moved. A spark he thought was gone. A spark called hope. The lock snapped open with a sharp crack. The human glanced at him, eyes steady. "Come on," the human said. "We don't have much time." The alien did not move. His body trembled, not from weakness alone, but from fear of disappointment. What if this was a trap? What if he stepped out only to be beaten again? But then the human reached inside, grabbed his arm, and pulled him gently but firmly. The touch was not cruel. It was strong, but it carried warmth, not hate. For the first time in years, the alien felt something he thought had been lost forever. He felt seen. He felt alive. Behind them, the ship groaned. Alarms had not yet sounded, but they would. Guards would come. Death would follow. The human knew this, and still he stayed. The alien's heart pounded in his chest as he stepped out of the cage. His chains clinked with every move, heavy but weaker than before. His legs almost failed him, but the human caught him before he could fall. In that moment, standing outside his cage for the first time in years, he realized something. He was not forgotten. The galaxy may have caged him, silenced him, buried him in shadows, but one human had come. One human had found him, and nothing would ever be the same again. The alien sat quietly in the small corner of the human's stolen shuttle. Still chained at the wrists, still weak in body, yet free from the cage for the first time in years. The hum of the ship's engines was soft, almost gentle compared to the constant roars and screams of the prison vessel. But his mind was not calm. His mind was a storm. As the human pilot focused on guiding the ship through the dark lanes of space, the alien's eyes drifted to the stars. He had once looked at those same stars with pride. They were maps of possibility, guiding his people to new worlds, new friendships, new futures. Now they only looked like cold fires watching him suffer. He remembered the fall of his people. They were once builders of beauty. Their cities floated above oceans. Their towers touched the clouds, and their songs carried through the night skies like light made into music. Other races admired them, traded with them, even studied under them. His people believed the galaxy was a family, and family would always protect its own. But when war came, the family turned its back. A ruthless empire swept across their star systems like a storm of fire. His people fought bravely, but they were scholars more than soldiers, dreamers more than killers. Their fleets burned, their cities fell. Their children were dragged from homes and lined up in chains, and the galaxy watched. Worlds that had once called them friends closed their gates, locked their skies, and did nothing. No fleets came. No armies defended them. No one spoke for them in the high councils. They were left alone to be crushed, like insects under the heel of giants. He remembered the night his home city was taken. Fire rained from the sky, lighting the seas with blood-red glow. His mother screamed as soldiers dragged them from their home. He had fought to protect his younger brother, but a strike to the head ended that fight in a single breath. When he woke, his family was gone and he was in chains. From that day on, he was no longer a person. He was property. The alien closed his eyes, the memories burning as if they had happened yesterday. He had been sold from master to master, from mine to mine, always carrying rock, always beaten when his arms grew weak. Some of his people had tried to fight, but rebellion only led to slaughter. Others had tried to escape, but they were hunted down, their bodies displayed as warnings. Soon, even whispers of freedom faded. His people stopped calling themselves by their old names. Their history was forbidden. Their language was beaten out of them. And so, little by little, their voices disappeared from the galaxy. He had been one of the last to resist. He had tried to keep the old songs in his heart, tried to remember the names of his family, tried to whisper his people's stories when the guards slept. But every time he whispered, a guard would hear. Every time he remembered, pain followed. In time, even he had fallen silent. That silence had been his prison. Stronger than chains, stronger than walls, a silence that convinced him he was already dead. Now, sitting inside this small human ship, he wondered if the silence would ever break. The human looked back at him for a moment. The alien met his eyes, and for the first time in years, someone looked at him not as property, not as a number, not as an animal. The human looked at him as if he mattered. The alien turned his gaze away quickly. He could not believe in that look. Not yet. He thought of the galaxy again, of the councils that ignored his people, of the traders who grew rich while his people were auctioned in markets, of the scholars who studied their old works but did not raise a voice when their creators were enslaved. The galaxy had forgotten them. Maybe that was the cruelest truth. To be killed was one thing. To be erased, to be turned into nothing more than shadows, was worse. His people were not only slaves, they were ghosts. The universe had erased them from memory. His throat tightened. He tried to speak, but the words stuck. It had been so long since he dared to speak freely. When at last a sound came, it was broken, weak, almost a whisper. Why you save me?" The human looked at him. His voice was steady. "Because you deserve more than a cage." The alien's chest trembled. The words were simple, but they carried something stronger than all the speeches he had once heard in the grand halls of his world. The human did not speak of politics or power or profit. He spoke of worth. He spoke as if one slave, one nameless being, mattered as much as a whole empire. The alien lowered his head. Tears touched his eyes, though he had forgotten how to cry. The galaxy had forgotten him. The galaxy had forgotten his people. But maybe, just maybe, this human had not. And in that fragile thought, buried under years of silence and pain, a seed of hope began to stir. The alien sat in silence, his wrists still chained, his body still weak. The human guided the stolen shuttle through a hidden path between the stars, engines low and quiet, like a thief slipping through shadows. Outside, the galaxy stretched wide and cold. Inside, the silence between the two grew heavy. The alien stared at the floor. His mind fought with itself. Could this human be trusted? Or was this just another cruel trick? He had seen kindness before, but it always came with a cost. Masters fed him before beating him harder. Traders smiled before selling him like meat. Hope was always a knife waiting to cut him again. Yet this human had broken the lock. This human had touched his arm without hate. This human had said words no one else dared. You deserve more than a cage. The alien's chest tightened. He wanted to believe. But belief was dangerous. The human finally broke the silence. His voice was steady, low, as if careful not to scare him. My name is Kale, he said. Soldier, rebel, fool, maybe. But not your enemy. The alien lifted his head slowly. His voice came out rough, unused, like dry stone scraping against stone. Why, human here. Humans not belong this place. Kale gave a small smile, though it was tired. Humans don't belong in many places, but sometimes we go anyway. The alien looked away, unsure how to answer. The human's words were strange, yet they carried no threat. Minutes passed. The ship rattled as it crossed a pocket of turbulence. The alien's body swayed, too weak to hold steady, and Kale reached out quickly, steadying him before he could fall. The touch startled him. He flinched, expecting a strike, but none came. Kale only pulled back his hand gently and nodded. You're safe here, he said, safe. The word echoed in the alien's mind like a language he had forgotten. Could safety still exist? The alien's throat ached as he tried to speak again. My people. No one save. Why, me? Kale's eyes hardened. He leaned back in his chair, hands tightening on the controls. Because someone has to start. Maybe it's not enough. Maybe I'll fail. But if I walk past one slave, then I'm no different from the empire that made you this way. The alien blinked. He had never heard such words. Not from his people before the fall. Not from allies who abandoned them, and certainly not from slavers. This human was different, but suspicion still lived inside him. His heart whispered warnings: don't trust. Don't hope. Don't fall into the trap again. Kale seemed to sense the battle in his eyes. He reached into his belt and pulled out a small blade. The alien tensed, ready for pain, but Kale only held the blade to the chains at his wrists. With a sharp strike, the chain snapped. The alien gasped. His wrists were free. The skin beneath was raw, red, marked by years of iron. For a moment, he only stared at them as if his own hands were strangers. Kale slid the blade back. No more chains, he said simply. The alien's chest trembled. His voice cracked as he whispered, Why risk your life? For me? Kale's gaze softened. Because cages don't scare me. Silence doesn't scare me, but a galaxy that forgets how to care, that scares me more than death. The alien looked at him in silence, stunned. This human spoke like no one he had ever known. Not as a conqueror, not as a master, but as if every life, even his, had weight. The ship's alarm suddenly beeped. A red light flashed. Kale cursed under his breath. They've noticed we're gone, he said. Scanners picking up patrol ships. We don't have much time. The alien's heart pounded. His body was weak, but fear gave him strength. He gripped the seat, eyes wide. They find us. We die, Kale nodded, calm but sharp. Maybe, but I didn't come this far to hand you back. He pulled the ship into a dive, weaving through debris fields. The stars flashed past like sparks. The alien's breath came quick, shallow. Fear wrapped around him like a second cage. But even as danger closed in, a strange thought entered his mind. He was not running alone. For the first time in years, someone ran with him. As the patrol ships closed in, the alien's hand shook. But he reached forward, touching Kale's arm. His voice was soft but clear. My name, he whispered, almost afraid to speak it, is Rin. Kale glanced at him, and for the first time the alien saw a true smile. Rin, he repeated. Good. Now let's make sure the galaxy remembers it. Outside, enemy ships grew closer. Inside, two beings sat side by side, one broken, one stubborn, both bound by a choice that could change everything. And for the first time in a long, dark lifetime, Rin felt something stronger than fear. He felt trust beginning to bloom. The prison ship loomed in the distance, its black hull covered with spikes of metal, its decks filled with soldiers who were now fully awake. Alarms screamed through the void. Searchlights swept across the dark fields of broken satellites and old wrecks, hunting for the one shuttle that dared to slip away. Inside that stolen shuttle, Kale's hands flew across the controls, eyes locked on the scanner. Red dots blinked, enemy ships spreading out, closing the trap. Rin sat in the co-pilot's chair, trembling. His body still weak, his wrists raw where chains had been, but his eyes were wide and alert. For years he had been forced to bow, to crawl, to obey. Now he sat in a chair of freedom, yet fear pressed down heavier than iron. "They are too many," Rin whispered. Kale's jaw tightened. "Maybe, but too many has never stopped me before." The first blast came like lightning across the stars. The shuttle shook, alarms screaming inside. Rin grabbed the seat, his heart pounding like a drum. Kyle twisted the ship into a sharp dive, weaving through floating wrecks. Broken hulls of ancient ships spun past them, jagged metal flashing like teeth. Lasers burned holes through the debris, sparks scattering like fireflies in the dark. Rin's chest tightened with every turn. His body cried out in pain, but he held on. He watched Kale move like water, calm even as death closed in. The human's eyes burned with focus, his movements sharp and fearless. Another shot hit the shuttle, sparks raining from the ceiling. Rin flinched. Smoke filled the cabin. Kale cursed under his breath, fighting the controls. "They'll tear us apart," Rin gasped. "We cannot escape." Kale's voice was iron. "Yes, we can. But I'll need your help." Rin froze. Help? For years he had been told he was useless, a tool, a slave. No one had ever asked him for help. His hands shook as he looked at the blinking lights and strange buttons around him. I don't know how," he whispered. Kale glanced at him, quick but steady. "Then learn. Freedom is learning fast. Pull that lever now." Rin obeyed, his weak hand trembling as he yanked the lever. Instantly, the shuttle spun to the side, dodging a blast that would have ended them. The enemy fire cut through empty space instead. Rin's breath caught. His chest surged. He had helped. He had done something. "Good," Kale said. "Again, hit that switch." Rin slammed the switch and a burst of counterflares shot out, confusing the scanners of the ships behind them. For the first time in years, Rin felt his heart beat not with fear but with purpose. The chase tore through the wreck field, enemy ships howling closer. Kale pulled the shuttle low, scraping past twisted beams of dead stations. One wrong turn and they would be dust. "They're pushing us into open space," Kale muttered. "We can't outrun them there." Rin swallowed hard. "Then what do we do?" Kale's eyes darted across the scanner. A shape flickered at the edge of the field. A collapsed warship, its massive hull split in two, floating like a wounded beast. "There," Kyle said. "We hide inside her bones." He steered the shuttle straight toward the broken warship. Enemy fire chased them, beams cutting closer, but Kale did not slow. Rin gripped the seat, certain they would crash. At the last moment, Kale dove into the hollow belly of the dead ship. Metal groaned around them as the shuttle squeezed through jagged gaps, sparks scraping across its hull. Then, silence. The enemy ships flew past, searching, scanning, but not finding. Inside the broken warship, Kyle killed the engines, plunging them into darkness. Both men sat still, breath heavy, the only sound the faint ticking of cooling metal. Rin's hands trembled. His chest rose and fell in sharp bursts. We live?" Kale gave a tired smile. "For now." The alien closed his eyes, his whole body shaking. Never had he felt such fear. Never had he felt such fire. For years he had been trapped, waiting for death. Now he was running with it, outpacing it, cheating it. And though his body ached, though his mind screamed with doubt, he realized something strange. He was not just surviving. He was fighting. Kyle leaned back, sweat dripping down his brow. "You did well, Rin." The alien looked at him, startled. No one had ever said those words to him. His throat tightened. I only did as you said." Kale's eyes softened. "That's more than most would dare. You're stronger than you think." Rin lowered his head, unsure how to hold the warmth those words lit inside him. Strong, him? For years he had been told he was nothing. A tool. A ghost. But now, a human believed otherwise. Outside, enemy ships circled, searching. The hunt was not over. Danger still waited. But inside the silent bones of a dead warship, two fugitives sat side by side. One human. One alien, breathing the rare air of freedom. And for the first time in a lifetime, Rin's silence did not feel like surrender. It felt like the start of something new. The silence inside the broken warship was short-lived. At first, only the creak of metal and the faint hum of damaged engines filled the air. But soon, a red warning light flashed on the shuttle's control board. A sharp alarm followed, echoing through the cabin. Cale smacked the controls with his hand, teeth clenched. "Damn it," he muttered. Rin leaned forward, his body trembling with weakness, but his eyes sharp. "What is it?" Cale's face was pale, sweat running down his brow. His left hand pressed against his side, dark red staining his armor. Only now did Rin notice the human was wounded. Blood. Rin's chest tightened. You are hurt." Cale tried to wave it off. "It's nothing." A scratch, but the stain grew darker. His hand pressed harder. Each breath came rougher than the last. Rin's eyes widened. "You bleed too much." His voice cracked, panicked. "You saved me while you—" Cale cut him off with a faint grin. "Didn't exactly have time to patch myself up, did I?" He coughed, blood at his lips, then forced his body straighter in the chair. His hand still guided the shuttle, steady despite the wound. Rin stared at him, shaken. He had seen humans before, but never like this. This one had broken chains, fought guards, and carried him through fire. And all while bleeding. Why? The question burned inside him. Why risk so much for a stranger, a slave, a forgotten alien? The alarm still blared. Cale leaned over the controls, shutting it down. "Engines won't hold," he said between heavy breaths. "We need repairs. But first, we have to stay alive." Through the cracked windows, Rin saw shadows moving. Enemy ships circled the wreck like hungry predators. They hadn't left. They were waiting. Kyle pulled the shuttle deeper into the warship's hollow body, hiding it behind broken beams. Metal scraped, sparks flew, but they stayed hidden in the dark. For now. Rin turned back to him. His heart pounded, fear mixing with something heavier. Guilt. His voice trembled. "You are hurt because of me. If you had left me, you would be safe." Cale's eyes, tired but fierce, met his. "If I had left you, then I wouldn't be human anymore." The words struck like thunder. Rin froze, his throat tight. For years he had been told his life had no value, that no one would risk even a breath for him. Yet here sat a man, bleeding, broken, and still believing his life was worth saving. He did not know whether to cry or scream. Cale leaned back, coughing again. His voice was weak but steady. "Listen, Rin, I won't lie. I don't know if we'll make it. But I do know this, you're free now." That's what matters. Rin's chest ached. Free? Was this what freedom was? To sit in the dark beside a dying man who had given everything for him. He reached out, his hands shaking, and pressed against Cale's wound. Warm blood spilled through his fingers. Cale winced but did not push him away. "You cannot die," Rin whispered, his voice cracking. "Not after this. Not after giving me back my name." Cale managed a weak smile. "Names don't matter if no one remembers them. That's your job now, Rin, to remember. To live." The words cut deeper than any blade. For years, Rin had forgotten his family, his history, his songs. He had silenced himself to survive. But now this human bleeding beside him asked him to carry memory itself, as if it were a weapon stronger than chains. Rin's eyes burned with tears. He had not cried in years. Not when beaten, not when starved, not even when his family was taken. But now the tears came, hot and heavy, falling onto Cale's armor. The human reached up with his free hand, gripping Rin's arm. His voice was rough, faint. "Don't waste time on tears. Use it to live. Promise me, Rin." Rin's voice broke. "I promise." The promise felt heavy, like carrying a mountain. Yet it also felt sharp, like a blade forged in fire. Outside, enemy ships drew closer, their lights sweeping the wreck. Inside, Cale's breaths grew weaker. The sacrifice had begun. Not in grand battles, not in heroic speeches, but in blood dripping quietly in the dark. Rin held pressure on the wound, his own strength weak but determined. He would not let the human fade without a fight. The galaxy had caged him, silenced him, and forgotten him. But this one human had given everything to remind him of freedom. And for that, Rin knew one truth. If Cale's sacrifice had already begun, then so had Rin's fight to make it mean something. The wrecked warship groaned around them, metal bending under the pull of gravity and time. The stolen shuttle sat deep within its hollow bones, hidden from the patrol ships outside. For a moment, silence ruled, but it was the kind of silence that carried weight, a silence that warned something worse was coming. Cale sat slumped in the pilot's chair, his hand still pressed against his wound. His breaths were short, sharp, and uneven. Each one sounded like it might be his last. Rin knelt beside him, desperate hands trying to stop the bleeding. His own wrists were raw, his body weak, but he pressed down with all the strength he had. "Hold on," he whispered, his voice trembling. "You cannot fall now. We are close." Kyle's lips curved into a faint, tired smile. "Close, yes, but not close enough." Rin shook his head, refusing to believe. "No, we can reach safety. You only need rest. I can—" The human gripped his arm, stopping him. His voice, though weak, carried iron. "Listen to me, Rin, there's no time for lies. The shuttle's engines are damaged. To break free from this grave, someone has to stay behind and override the locks. From here," Rin froze. His chest tightened as if chains had snapped back around him. He understood at once. If one stayed behind, the other could fly free. But the one who stayed would die. "No," Rin said, his voice breaking. "We escaped together, both. There must be another way." Kale's gaze held steady, though his body trembled. "Sometimes there isn't. Sometimes freedom has a cost. And this time I'll pay it." The alien shook his head violently. "You saved me. You bled for me. And now you ask me to leave you? That is no freedom. That is death." Kale coughed, blood on his lips, but his smile grew faintly brighter. "Freedom is more than survival, Rin. It's the chance to choose. And I choose to give you life." The words cut deeper than any blade. Rin's throat burned, his eyes wet. For years, no one had ever given him choice. No one had cared if he lived or died. Yet here was a human, wounded and weak, choosing him above his own life. The ship shuddered. Lights flickered. Outside, the scanners of enemy patrols grew closer, their search tightening like a noose. Time was slipping away. Kyle tried to push himself up from the chair, but his strength failed. Rin caught him, holding him steady. "You cannot do this alone," Rin whispered. "I was never alone," Kale said softly. "You were here." Rin's hands trembled. He wanted to scream, to fight, to refuse. But deep inside, he knew Kale was right. If both of them stayed, both would die. The galaxy would never hear their story. And then Kale's sacrifice would mean nothing. The human's voice dropped low, almost a whisper. "Go, Rin, fly the shuttle. Live free, tell them your name. Tell them you were not forgotten." Rin's tears fell freely now. He had not cried in years, but the flood could not be stopped. His voice shook. "I cannot carry this alone." "You can," Kyle said, gripping his hand weakly. "Because you must." The sound of enemy engines grew louder outside. The warship shook as blasts struck its hull. They had minutes at most. Kale reached for the control panel, his hand trembling but steady in purpose. He began to override the lock system, his fingers moving with the last of his strength. "Once it's done, the shuttle will launch. You won't be able to come back for me." Rin stared at him, heart-breaking, body shaking. The thought of leaving this man, this human who had given everything, tore him apart. But Kale's eyes held his, steady, unyielding, filled with a fire stronger than pain. "Promise me," Kale whispered. "Promise me you'll live." Rin swallowed hard, his voice cracking. "I promise." Kale gave one final nod, his lips curving into a faint, proud smile. "Good, then go." Rin's legs felt like stone as he stumbled to the pilot's seat. His hands hovered over the controls, trembling. The shuttle hummed, preparing for launch. Behind him, Kyle leaned back against the chair, blood staining his armor, eyes half closed. He looked not afraid, but at peace. The engines roared to life. The shuttle shuddered. Rin's heart pounded like thunder. Tears blurred his vision, but his hands stayed firm. He would honor the promise. As the shuttle shot forward, leaving the wreck and the human behind, Rin looked back one last time. He saw Kale sitting tall in the broken warship, his figure fading into shadow as enemy fire rained down, and then the warship exploded, light swallowing everything. Rin's scream tore through the cabin, a sound of grief and rage and freedom all at once. He was alive, but part of him had died with the human who stayed behind, knew. The shuttle tore free from the broken warship, engines burning bright against the endless black. Behind it, a single burst of light filled the stars, the explosion of metal, fire, and silence. The warship was gone, and with it, Kale Rin sat frozen in the pilot's seat, hands gripping the controls so hard his knuckles shook. His chest felt hollow, as if the blast had ripped him apart too. The roar of the engines filled the cabin, but all he heard was silence. A silence heavy with loss. He closed his eyes. He saw Kale's face, pale but steady, smiling through pain. He heard the words echoing again. "Promise me you'll live." Rin opened his eyes slowly. The stars stretched out before him, endless and empty. He was free. The chains were gone. The cage was gone. But freedom felt like a wound. His whole life he had dreamed of escape. He thought escape would taste like joy, like victory. Yet now it tasted of ashes. What was freedom without the one who gave it? The scanners beeped. Enemy ships were still behind him, searching, chasing. Rin's body shook, but his hands moved over the controls. He pulled the shuttle into a dive, cutting through the wreck fields with precision. Kale had taught him. Kale had trusted him. And now he would not fail. The patrol ships fell back, their scanners confused by the debris. Rin pushed the shuttle further until at last the enemy signals vanished from the screen. Silence returned. This time not heavy with fear, but wide, endless, open. The alien leaned back in the chair, his body weak, his eyes wet. He touched the raw skin of his wrists where chains had once cut deep. For the first time in years, they were free. Truly free, he whispered, barely more than a breath. Kyle. The name filled the cabin. Small, fragile, but alive. And in that moment, Rin understood. Kale was gone, but his sacrifice had not vanished into the void. It lived in him. The galaxy had forgotten his people. It had erased their names, their history, their voices. But Rin would not let Kale be forgotten. Not Kale, who gave everything for a stranger. Not Kale, who believed one life still mattered. Rin leaned forward, setting a course into deep space. He did not know where he would go. But he knew one truth. The story could not die here. He would tell it. He would tell of the human who broke a cage, who risked everything, who stayed behind so another could live. He would tell it in whispers at first to those still in chains. He would tell it in markets, in back alleys, in shadowed corners where the enslaved still dreamed of freedom. And maybe, one day the whispers would grow into a roar. The galaxy might turn its head, might pretend not to see. But stories had power. Stories could burn brighter than stars, and Kale's story would not fade. Rin looked out at the stars. Once they had seemed cold, watching him suffer. Now they seemed different. Not warmer, not gentler, but alive. Each star felt like a witness. Each one a reminder that the galaxy was vast, and in its vastness hope could hide. His people had been thinkers, dreamers, singers. They had lost everything. But now he carried not only their silence, but Kale's voice. And Kale's voice had said, "You deserve more than a cage." Rin's hands steadied on the controls. He whispered again, stronger this time, "I am Rin. I am not forgotten." The shuttle glided into the unknown, a lone speck against the great sea of night. But it carried more than one life. It carried a promise. For sometimes it takes only one human, bleeding, broken, stubborn enough to care, to remind the stars what freedom means. And because of that, one human, hope lived on.